Hey, welcome to another edition of Late Night with Larry. I'm your host, Larry D, here with my co-host, Vince. Vince, give me a shout out.
Hey, welcome back to the Larry D Studios.
That's right, we're back again. And tonight, we want to talk a little bit about the Native American culture and their beliefs in the legendary Bigfoot.
Not the legend of, the legendary.
The legendary.
Well, I think we should start it off with little shots. Since
Oh, right, here we go.
We'll be talking about our favorite subject once again.
That's right. Here's
to you guys. Smooth.
Booyah!
Okay, now research. We're researching the folklore, the tales, the stories, the beliefs that the Native Americans have about Sasquatch. Now, Sasquatch was a term coined by, I believe, is one of the Pacific Northwest tribes, right?
Well, it was Sasquatch is how they used to say it, but the name Sasquatch came from a reporter who couldn't pronounce. He was doing a story on Bigfoot, but he couldn't pronounce how they said it, so he came up with his own version in the English word Sasquatch, which to him sounded like how they pronounced it.
Right.
And it stuck ever since he published his story. It stuck from then out.
Or Bigfoot.
Right.
Now, I came across one person who tried to pass all this off as a hoax, going back to right before the Patterson-Gimlin film was filmed. One of the construction workers at that construction site where they found the prints, he admitted hoaxing with, fake footprints. So he went back to that, and he trying to say that this is all one big hoax because scientists don't believe it's possible. But these stories in Native American folklore, they go back way far, even before the settlers were here.
That's right. They go back as far back as natives inhabited the Americas.
Yes.
Now, on my research, most of the Northwest Native tribes, that's like up in the Northwest, Washington, Oregon, that area, up into Canada, they believe that Sasquatch is like a guardian of the forest, and we did a podcast on that, guardian of the forest, but they believe he's a protector and a keeper of the forest. Now, they don't believe that he has magical powers like some other tribes do. They just believe that this creature is flesh and blood. He eats, he sleeps, he poops, just like human beings. So they consider him a brother, just from a different tribe. Right. And their folklore just gives him credit for protecting the forest. And some of the tribes up in that area said that they used to, intermingle with these creatures at one time before colonization happened and the settlers came. And that's when things started to change. And I believe it because that's when the white man brought the disease and everything else to this country. So
Right. Now, there are some tribes who consider it to be like a mystical being, a spiritual being, right?
They do.
But a lot of the tribes that we researched, even the tribes that are close to here where we're from, they believe it's a flesh and blood creature. Now, I work with some natives, and they consider, one of the terms they used was the forest people, the forest brothers, the forest elders, the terms like that.
Right.
And it was funny, I know I touched on this before, but even around here, they talk about how Sasquatch have abducted women, and they call those women forest brides.
Right.
So if it's a spiritual creature, I don't think it'd be abducting people.
Right. And going back on that note, it's like some of the plains tribes and tribes like up in the northeastern peninsula of like New York and the Catskill Mountains and those areas, they believe that this creature possesses supernatural powers, that he could move in and out through dimensions, and he's part human, part spiritual. And that's why it's so hard to see him. That he'll reveal himself just to who he needs to reveal himself to. And for what reasons? Some of the tribes, they say he's a messenger that only reveals himself in times of need or trouble. When they said he's sent from God to give us warnings. When you see him, you know you're off the path of living with nature and obeying God's basically order of the universe is what they say.
Right. Now, they were talking about one of the reasons they think he's a spiritual being is because he could just disappear so fast. Now, last night we were in the Jemez Mountains, and that's one of the subjects we were talking about.
Right.
Now, we went to our camping spot. We got there probably minutes before it got dark. And we talked about this for a minute, and we were looking at the surrounding area, the thickness of the forest and the brush. And I told him, if you see a person, a Sasquatch, a bear, or any animal, he takes 10 steps and he's out of view.
Right. And we did. We looked and we said, okay, if you see him and you turn around, it would take, and as fast as these creatures move, it would take 1-2 seconds, and they're already back in the brush, and you couldn't see them. You wouldn't be able to pick them out.
Right. Now, if they're still moving, you might be able to hear them, but they are pretty stealthy. Even if they take a few steps and they hunker down in the brush where you can't see them, most people I know aren't going to go chasing after them.
Right. I don't think too many people will, just for the sheer experience of where most people that see them, they freeze up, they get terrified.
Right.
And if the creature vocalizes, you're doubled for sure not going to go, because when they vocalize, most people do get terrified.
Right.
And turn the other way. But back to the beliefs that the natives have about them. My brother was telling me about a story which I didn't even know that was interesting, and you want to share that story?
Yeah, I came across it. I was doing some research, and it was called the Choctaw Indian Sasquatch War of, I believe, 1885. And what happened was this Choctaw tribe was living in pretty much in harmony with the Sasquatch. Now, the Sasquatch would go take things from the tribe, and they would just they would just let it go, because they know how big and powerful they were. So the Sasquatch started getting more bold over time, and they started stealing supplies from the tribe, from the village, and eventually they started abducting children. So the elders got together, and they had to formulate a plan to stop it. So this was during the time of the settlers, and there was an outpost not far. There was a general, I can't remember his name, but the tribes members, the leaders, went to this outpost to ask this general for help for finding the children and seeing what really happened to them. The general said that he knew the Choctaw Indian well enough. Their relationship with the Indians wasn't very strong. It was more of an understanding, so they wouldn't go to war. But he said for these natives to come and ask for my help, there must be something seriously wrong. So he agreed to go help them. They got together, a couple of soldiers, some of the warriors from the tribe, and they formed a search party. Well, they went out for a few days, and I want to say on the second or third day, they came across a prairie, and then they found some of the remains of the children. I guess the Sasquatch were abducting them and eating them. So they tracked down the Sasquatch, and there was a war. The general that they asked for help, he was killed. Some of the native warriors were killed, but they killed 4 Sasquatch. And after the battle was done, they buried the general and the warriors. They gave them a respectable funeral. And the Sasquatch, they burned the bodies out in the middle of the field as a warning to the other ones.
That sends a pretty strong warning.
Right. I thought that was an interesting story. I never heard that before. Fact or fiction, I can't tell you. I don't know. I wasn't there. And just like anything in history, did it really happen? I don't know. We just got to take what they tell us. We got to
at face value.
Yeah, right. So, but I thought it was very interesting. It's very conceivable, especially if you talk to the tribes around here, the experiences in the past that they've had with the Sasquatch abducting people. So I think that's a very believable story.
It was, and I had never heard that. Now, I did hear similar stories where tribes would go to war with these creatures, to where, like most tribes at one time said that they traded with them, that they would exchange goods with them, and they lived in harmony with them. But I guess as settlement happened and, things started to change, At times they would go to war with them for that simple fact that they would, like my brother said, they would abduct women and children.
Right.
So they would mount war parties and fend them off and try and get their women and children back. Now, some of the Plains tribes that I was reading about, not so much the Northwest tribes, but mostly the Plain tribes, the Hopi tribes, they considered them to be like the Wendigo. Some tribes said they are the incarnation of the Wendigo. Now, the Wendigo it's a cannibalistic creature, and from what I've heard, the Wendigo differs from Bigfoot if you see it, because the Wendigo has like antlers like a deer.
Right.
And but these creatures will attack a human, and they say they're cannibalistic. So if you see a Wendigo, of course you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. And but that some of the tribes believe that the cannibalistic big feet, and they call them big feet, not Bigfoot, are incarnation of the Wendigo. And I didn't know that either until I read some of these stories from these tribes. But it's interesting that every tribe out there has a name for Sasquatch,
Right.
Bigfoot, whatever you want to call them. And it goes from wild man of the forest to hairy man to elder brother. They each have a distinct name for Bigfoot. And those names have been around even before the settlers came.
Right. That's why I kind of laugh at these people who want to call everything a hoax, because folklore for the natives goes back hundreds of years, and these people here, they probably never been off a hiking trail, but they want to write it off as a hoax.
Right. And I did read about the family that said that Bigfoot was a hoax, that they made the cast out of wood. Well, here's the thing. We know some prominent scientists that have studied cast, and they say these have dermal ridges, so these have to be real. You can't produce dermal ridges in wood. I don't care how good you are. They'll be able to tell now these ain't real dermal ridges because they don't have the bend and give that a human foot would.
Right.
So that again, that tells me that a lot of these people that are trying to say that Bigfoot's a hoax, I'm like, yeah, I call your bluff, because why do these tribes have, for hundreds of years before they settled these nations, they have stories and pictures, drawings of these creatures, and
Right.
they're in their folklore.
Right, and I want to say even here in Albuquerque, we got the petroglyphs on the west side. I want to say there's drawings of like hairy men, big hairy men,
Right.
as well as aliens.
Right, and that's another thing, that's a different topic about the star children and the gods that came
but
from the stars.
We're going with the Native American folklore.
Right. But yeah, they have these things. Those were their records, drawing on the cave walls or drawing on petroglyphs. Those are their records, because they didn't have pen and paper like we do.
Right.
So that's how they recorded everything. And yes, all over this country, even down into South America, they have stories of these creatures.
Yes. Well, actually, these creatures, they have stories all over the world. They have them in Russia. What do they call them in Russia? It's a Yeti.
The Yeti.
The Yeti, same as the Himalayas.
Right.
But that goes back centuries. Now, another story I came across when I was doing research was about a Native American tribe. Now, they referred to Sasquatch as the elder brother, the elder forest brother, I believe it was. Now, one particular story, they mounted a hunting party, and they had to go, they call it 3 moons travel, which is 3 nights or 3 days.
Right.
So when they finally got to the hunting grounds where the game was, they killed a deer. It took 3 nights, 3 days to get it back. By the time they got it back to the tribe where everyone was, the village, the meat was already spoiling. So there was a lot of waste. Now they went back to the same hunting grounds, and one of the hunters got a deer. It was a small deer, but when you need food to provide for the family, you'll take what you could get.
That's right.
So he drew back on his bow, and he took the shot, and he said the Sasquatch came out, he grabbed the arrow and snapped it. Now, the Sasquatch disappeared after that back into the forest. So they were all kind of shaken up, but they continued to hunt. Now, another bigger deer, I think they said it was a buck, came out. Another warrior drew back his bow, and before he could let it go, the Sasquatch came out of the forest again and blocked his shot. So, of course, he put his bow down, and they said the Sasquatch chased the deer down and caught it and broke its leg. Now, they were all kind of in shock just seeing what they were seeing. Right. But the Sasquatch, once he broke the deer's leg, he went and gathered handfuls of different herbs and even some honey, and he fed it to the deer. And they said that was to kill the pain from the broken leg of the deer. He threw the deer over his shoulder, and he started walking back toward the village. Now, all the hunters followed him along the way. They said they had to pretty much run to keep up with him. Right. But they did, and anytime he would come across a creek, he would stop, he would give the deer water. If there was any signs that the deer had any pain, he would give them those same herbs with honey, and that would kill the pain of the deer. The Sasquatch took the deer all the way back to the village. They took the deer in the village, and they said they all gathered around the deer, they thanked the deer, then they, dispatched it. They killed it. That way, the meat was fresh, there was no waste. But they said, as mysteriously as a Sasquatch appeared to block their shots and whatever, he disappeared once they got the deer to the village.
And see, and that's why so many people think that these creatures have the special powers they do. Now, that story, it coincides with so many things I've heard from tribal folklore, because these creatures, they live off the land and the land only. And yes, the tribe members say when they're around they smell, they're foul odored, but if you live in the forest all your life and you eat raw protein like these creatures do, I don't know what they truly eat, but they say they eat the raw protein. From some of the stories I've heard, they favor the liver and the heart. And people are like, why would they eat the liver and the heart and leave the rest of the carcass for other wild scavengers? Well, if you're a big muscle creature like that and you need protein, of course you could get it from the nuts and the berries and whatnot, but every now and then maybe it's a delicacy for them. And but the heart and liver are highest in protein in the animal.
But going back to that subject, I've heard other stories where they have ripped the legs off and taken them.
Well, I mean, they could do that too. But see, these are different stories that I hear in different parts. Now, what I hear the Northwest tribe say about the heart and the liver, that's in the Northwest. Now, we come to the East Coast and in the Kentucky area, and you hear, and they're like, yeah, they ripped the carcass apart and took it. Now, the stories in Texas and the Big Thicket, yeah, they destroy the carcass. They use it all. And so just like there's different tribes, I'm gonna say there's different tribes of these creatures as well.
Right.
Because the behavior countrywide seems to be different from the Northwest Canada, up in the Catskills, Kentucky, Texas.
Yeah, and it's the same with human behavior, I believe.
Right.
Like, we are from a small town, we moved to a bigger city, and human behavior is so much different, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, back where we're from, everything kind of moves at a much slower pace. And we're both military. We lived in California. We lived in big cities where the pace, coming from a small town, the pace kind of blows you away at first until you get used to it.
Right, and it does. I mean, I lived in L.A., Chicago. I was stationed on the East Coast, Norfolk. And I got used to city life, it moving fast. I lived in Indianapolis. And I come back here, and especially the small town, when we go visit our family, I love my family, but I can't wait to leave.
Right, it's in and out.
Yes, it's in and out.
Now, and that's what brings me to my next point about the Sasquatch having human features. Like you said, depending on their location, they may act differently.
And I do believe that's true. It's the geographical location is how they act.
Now, back to eating the livers and stuff, maybe it depends on the location. Maybe where they're at in the Pacific Northwest, the nuts, the berries are plentiful, so there's plenty to eat. And they just eat the protein that they need,
right?
And they leave the rest so it's not wasted for the scavengers.
Right.
And that's why a lot of people say when you hear Bigfoot howls, you hear coyotes.
Yeah.
Coyotes are smart. They follow. We have them at work. They follow us around to beg for scraps. They probably do the same with the Bigfoot.
I'm sure they do. And they would have good eating if they follow them creatures.
Yes, and that also brings me back to that story we heard at the Sasquatch Festival about the natives in this area.
That's
where
right.
the men were taken away and the Sasquatch would bring carcasses to feed the women and children.
They would. And the pieces of the carcass that were missing were the liver and the heart.
Yes.
But they would bring the carcass and lay it down for the women to get it. And it was during the winter time when they knew that these women and these children couldn't go hunt. Now, this is told by a Navajo elder. And she said she lived it. She saw it. So I'm not going to question her.
No.
If she lived it and saw it, I'm not going to insult her and call her a liar.
One thing I've learned about since we've been, over the last few years, we've really dove deep into this subject, into aliens, into other stuff, folklore, and I've learned not to doubt somebody's story. Because some people tell it with such conviction, they believe it, so I got to believe it. And like I said, I can't call them a liar because I wasn't there.
That's my philosophy. If I wasn't there to say, no, it didn't happen, then I really can't. Even if it's total fable, I'm going to respect your story. Why? Because now we have our own stories of things we've heard, and I don't want people just looking at me and saying, you're a fool, you're an idiot.
Right. Now, when I had my encounter, I learned real quick, be careful who you tell your story to.
That's right.
Because I was ridiculed.
And most people are afraid to tell their stories because they're ridiculed. But, you get some of these. For one, it's hard to get the tribes and tribal members to tell you the story because they just don't want to talk to outsiders about tradition, the folklore, the stories. So it's really hard. So when you finally get them to finally tell you about some of their tradition and folklore, you better respect it.
Right.
Or they will shut tight and you'll never get another word out of them.
Right. And to get them to open to you, they obviously respect you.
That's right. You got to earn their respect before they will talk to you. I will say that.
Right.
But they do have interesting stories, folklore. I mean, not only on Sasquatch, but skinwalkers and...
Skinwalkers are really big in this area, and there's some great stories, and they are kind of tight-lipped about the stories unless they know you.
Right.
We've been trying to get some people to come and tell their stories, but that's a difficult task, but hopefully we will. Now, right. I want to go to real quick touch on, I work with a native man, and he has some property, it's in northern New Mexico. He has cattle and stuff. Now, it's big enough that hunters could go hunt on his land, and just recently, as last week, he told me stories about he has Sasquatch activity. Now, he just calls it the howler. I have a howler. The howler's back is what he told me because he hears them off in the distance at night, and he's even had visual sightings like coming home from work at night. Now, last week, it's hunting season here in New Mexico. There was some hunters on his property, and they came over and they asked him one morning, we saw somebody early in the morning in a ghillie suit.
Right.
And he's like, no, you just saw the howler. And to me, that'd be like, whoa, amazing. But he lives with it every day, so it's just another day for him.
Well, and that's just how some of the natives are. I mean, they're used to it. They're on their property. I just read a post on my Facebook group, and it's about the Northwest, and they're natives. They were taken to her friend's property and they were hiking, and she says, I have Bigfoot on my property. Well, in her post, she talked about, and she posted some good pictures. And now, if they're genuine, I don't know, but I'm going to believe they are because they talked that while they hiked, they heard someone following them, and she said, that's a Bigfoot following us. And some of the pictures she posted, we've seen the same structures, branches hanging in a different way, bands, and like stick structures built. I'm like, that's typical from what we know what Sasquatches do.
Right.
But it was on this native woman's property, and she said, they're here. And they don't harm her, they don't bother her. So that's what I'm saying. The folklore and the tales, like they're in the Northwest doing this, and they're left alone, but they're watched. Now bring it to Texas and the Big Thicket, they would have probably been abducted or chased out.
Chased out, yes.
Most definitely from the stories I heard down there.
Right.
So I guess it does depend what region they are, and and the tribes that are spread out throughout the nation, they have their interactions with them. And that's going to determine the folklore that we hear.
Right. Now, like we talked about before, it could be the geological location. Up here where we are, these mountains go north who knows how far. So if humans kind of intrude on their property, they're more passive because they got more they could move to.
Right.
In East Texas, who knows? They're fighting for every inch of land they could get.
So that could be why they're aggressive. They feel they're cornered in.
And that's why we need to make a trip and check it out.
That's right. I would like to make a trip to the Big Thicket. Now, there's people that I could reach out to, and they said that we're welcome to contact them, and they will take us out, and we will get Squatch activity without a doubt.
Right, but we will have to make a disclaimer on our podcast before that. This will be the last time you see us.
Right, no, and they said they are violent, and they will let you know that you're not wanted there. And I'm going to believe it because, based on our research and what we dig into, they're different wherever they go.
Right.
Now, I tend to think that they migrate, but really when we think about it, I mean, we were up in the Jemez last night and we were driving, and how many deer did we see?
A lot. And
I'm like, there's plentiful food if they want deer. It's there. There's plenty of water. There's the lake. They don't need to travel if they don't want to.
And every deer we saw, they had 2 or 3 fawns with them.
Right. So
there's plenty of
good eating up there.
Yeah, and we always. What did you see last time? A bunch of wild turkey. We see quail. I
seen like a trail of 20 wild turkeys. I seen about 30 quail running around.
And these mountains are loaded with piño nuts.
That's
now,
right.
Not only the animals, the Sasquatch love them, but the people go nuts over them.
That's right. I would think that if we have a group of Squatches up in the Jemez, that they don't need to travel. Now, they may go up and down the mountain chain, Colorado and New Mexico, but there's plenty of wildlife for them to eat.
And the key in the Jemez is there's water everywhere.
Everywhere. We were up there last night, and we drive through this one section, and we noticed, we said, where's this water coming from? Well, the Jemez, it's an old volcano, so you have hot springs. Water bubbles up everywhere.
Right. Now, it's the road. The road actually sinks in.
Right.
And when the road sinks in, there's mud underneath because there's water. Now, there was water coming off the side of the road, water everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's not an issue for them.
But yet it didn't rain.
Right. It hasn't rained in a while.
But we encourage you all to dig into the internet, or if you know any natives, talk to them. See what their folklore is about Sasquatch, and you may be interested in what they have to say.
Right. Even if you're still on the fence like we were at one time,
right.
The stories are amazing. They're just great. If you could research it, or better yet, get them to open up and tell you the stories that have been passed down for generations. There's some really intriguing stories.
They are. They're interesting. They come with a message, all of them.
Yes.
And just respect it.
Right.
Don't laugh at it, and don't tell them they're full of shit. Or
right. And if you're not going to believe, don't ask for them to tell.
Right, because that's just how tribal members are. They're a different breed of people, and and like I tell my brother, we have native in us. That's why we're so fucked up. Whoa.
Yep. Okay.
No. No, we're not. We're just different people.
Right. But the natives, they take their culture, their beliefs very serious.
Yeah, and maybe that's why my kids would always tell me, Dad, why are you so damn serious?
Right, and maybe that's what's lacking in our culture today. People have gotten away from their beliefs of their culture and stuff. And
I respect the stories they tell. I love them, and it's interesting. It's interesting, and I guess I like it because we have we've dived into this subject like I've never dived into any subject, and
Right.
and I'm gonna see my sighting someday, like my brother had his experience. I'll have mine.
Yep.
And until that day, I'm gonna keep digging and searching. Now, before we go on that note, tribes also say that, they know. I've said this before, but tribal members have also said they know the minute you get in the forest, and they know if you're looking for them, and that's why you're not going to find them.
Right. We talked about this last night, and I told him, just like somebody drives up in your driveway, you know they're there before they know you see them.
Right.
And you kind of size them up, and you decide if you're going to answer the door or not.
And based on where you are, according to the natives spiritually, your need, they may reveal themselves to you, because that revealing, it's bringing a message to you. You may not know it at the time, but later on it'll come to you.
Yep. We've got awfully close. I mean, it was dark. I've seen them in the dark, but maybe one day we'll get that Class A sighting we're looking for.
We may, and I'm gonna just believe that, because every time I go up with my brother, I'm looking for them. They let us know they're there, but
They definitely
seen them yet.
They definitely let us know. Every time we go to, for instance, that campsite we go to,
Right.
it was totally different. There's always something different that we can pick out that's maybe questionable, like a tree broken, pushed over, a limb, the how they curve them and stuff.
Right. No, and it is different. But that's what we wanted to share with you guys tonight, and we hope you enjoy it. And we encourage you to really look at some of the native folklore concerning Bigfoot, Sasquatch.
Yes. Do your own research.
Yes.
But before we go, how can they get a hold of us?
You can email us at latenightwithlarry55@gmail.com and hit that subscribe button. You can also find us on YouTube. Just type in Late Night with Larry and just episode 1 through 56, and we'll pop up.
And if you look for us on YouTube, you get to see our ugly faces.
That's right. Now you'll see our ugly faces. For the first few, you're just going to get audio. But now you'll get our ugly faces.
Yeah, you'll see Mickey needs to cut my eye.
That's right. Joe Adrian. All right. Well, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button, and we'll be back with more.
Peace.
Peace.